Okay. Hi, Graham, and thank you for your time. And, so let's talk about education, design education. Bam. So you started a school in Asia, in Bangkok. So why?
That's correct. Because the short answer is because the gap between higher education and industry is widening. And we see an opportunity to advance industry by having co-op models and getting graduates into work. Employers want expertise and they want experience, and they don't necessarily want qualifications. I think Don Norman said a couple of months ago that the future of design education is non-degree education, and we advocate that as well. Mm-hmm. So the ecosystem around design education is changing rapidly with the impact of COVID. Higher education institutions are more aligned to embedding online and flexible learning practices, and that's what we've done as well from the get-go, leveraging learning management system technologies and ways in which we can deliver learning in a blended and flexible way that's appropriate to our students. We don't agree necessarily that 21st century students should be taught by 20th century professors with a 19th century curriculum and an 18th century calendar.
Yeah. Well, what worries me, because as I told you before, I was also teaching design, and I was teaching a master class in Austria. By the way, just for the audience, for the 3 people from our family that are watching, your school is called Design School Asia, so designschoolasia.com. So I was teaching as well. I was teaching a master class, visual analysis, and I noticed that design students don't write a lot, and they become very practical, And however, when they're challenged, they were thinking very, very well, So what do you think about the gap between being very practical, the way education was like 1,000 years ago, you need to be like learn a practical skill, and then having that higher level thinking, critical thinking and stuff like that. How does that mix into design education?
Well, I think critical thinking and being critical absolutely is at the top of our list. This also is dependent on culture of the country. In Southeast Asia, particularly, there is a very hierarchical system. Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and China to an extent. So the concern is that will students have the ability to feel that critique and feel that answering questions is not a personal attack. It's actually part of discourse, it's part of subject engagement. So we do strongly encourage the ability to use verbal rhetoric, to be able to communicate and to defend your work. In terms of academic writing, I'm not so sure. I understand that there is obviously a need for academic writing and peer review publications.
Writing as an example of thinking about what they're designing. So not really a formal writing, but more that they had they didn't have so much time thinking about the work as much as they had to learn the practical side of work, and so that's not really academic. They don't have to do like a research paper or something like that. Yeah.
No, I think it comes down to the basics of sketchbook work as well. Evidence in sketchbooks, or what we now call what we call CRJs, creative reflective journals. We expect to see annotations and we expect to see writing as well, because that's part of experiential learning. Not just necessarily sketches. We want to be able to see evidence of telling the story. We are in the business of telling stories to our clients and our customers and to our students, and we expect them to tell stories in terms of narrative.
Yeah.
to us. So I think writing is as important as being able to visualize something, because those annotations in the margins are really important to actually get some deeper learning and deeper subject engagement.
Yeah. So you're building a school. And you started it how many years ago?
Started 2 years ago. This has been something that I've been wanting to do. I've been in the design education and design research and design practice for 30 years, not long after the Antirom team, actually. That was very influential on me. And it's something that we feel that is of need in this part of the world. Unfortunately, higher education remains, broadly speaking, both exclusive and elitist in emerging markets. So we want to bring something fresh to the table with a different perspective.
Yeah.
We also want to consider that campuses are physical things traditionally, and all of Southeast Asia's mega cities, Bangkok, KL, Jakarta, Manila, all suffer from horrific traffic, terrible public transport infrastructure. I mean, Bangkok's getting better, but the time it takes for the student to go into the classroom and back again can be up to 4 hours.
Oh.
So why can't we take that? Why can't we deliver that learning online and spend that time face to face, nurturing, criticality and tutorials, and actually having more subject discourse rather than just sitting in a classroom?
Yeah.
So it makes sense to do it.
Yeah. Okay. So 2 years. Sorry. Yeah, that's good info. But I'm trying to go back to what I wanted to say. So and obviously, what is your ideal designer that you want to create? And considering that you just started 2 years, and probably even in 10 years, you will have to make a lot of compromises. You will not be able to create that, the classes, the curriculum for the perfect designer. But how do you see a perfect designer? Like if you had absolute power, unlimited time, you could do, how do you imagine a perfect designer in Bangkok, in Southeast Asia? What would you, like if you could create this person, how can you describe this? And sorry to ask this esoteric philosophical questions, but
No,
yeah.
no, it's a great philosophical question. One word, it would be interdisciplinary. Design is moving from design of artifact to design for system, particularly in the user experience design space. And that requires having a number of hats. You need to be very analytical in terms of research and in terms of gathering architecture and information and systems and all of those things. And you also need to have experimentation and imagination. So I know the word interdisciplinary is rather overused now, but I think we really would like to take the best of engineering, the best of the social sciences, and the best of the humanities, and kind of put them through the meat grinder, and that would be the perfect persona. Someone that has, the ability to critically think, to be able to analyze quantitative data, but also, have that kind of instinct, that gut feeling.
Yeah. And how is that perfect designer that, let's say in a utopia, some kind of a perfect ideal you can create, how would that designer contribute to the culture and community of Thailand or Bangkok? How would they interact with it? Would they work, for the big multinationals that are coming over? Would they create local companies? How would they impact the community? How do you see their role in the community?
Well, that very much echoes the DNA of Design School Asia, which is to develop cultural, economic, and social change. And we need it here in this part of the world. A lot of this comes down to design for social innovation, doesn't it? In terms of, if you want to create impact, you will need to have stakeholders involved, and you will need to have funding involved. Now, I think we are quite behind the curve in terms of Western Europe and the US on that side. We are starting to see more stakeholder engagement at corporate level and at enterprise level. I think most of these initiatives should come from business and not NGO or government funding, because there's too much red tape and there's too much bureaucracy. So the best way to develop cultural, social and economic change is probably through CSR initiatives with the corporates and looking at outreach programs and things like that.
Yeah.
By the same token, the backbone of the Thai economy is SME.
Yeah.
We have a few conglomerates, but the vast majority of GDP comes from SME. So there's lots of opportunities here to do that.
Yeah. Well, okay, you mentioned the corporate social responsibility, so as a way to interact with the community, but what about creation of new products from Thailand, from Bangkok, that can, become multinational, let's say international? So, because in my experience, I work with SMEs in Italy, and I don't see them doing a lot of corporate social responsibility. That's kind of a word for companies have like 100,000 employees and have lost touch with everything, but have become power institutions. But SMEs are still kind of more of a servant than a master. So they have to serve, but they want to serve more people. They want to grow by going outside the borders. And do you see a role in your school teaching local companies produce products that can be sold internationally? Or is there an interest? I don't even know. I mean, Thailand, I think about it as a tourist destination, meaning you go there on the beach, but I don't think of me here in Serbia or somewhere else buying a Thai clothes or okay, there is a Thai restaurant everywhere, but like buying a Thailand product, a computer, a car, or something like that,
Short answer is we've never had a unicorn out of Thailand, and this is one of the problems and frustrations that angel investors and corporate investors face, is that there is no unicorn in Thailand. It's going to take time because there is a lot of it's not as entrepreneurial as the likes of Singapore in terms of setting up a business and getting up and running. There's plenty of money here, but it actually taking products to market. And also in terms of Thailand's soft power, what do we have? Well, we have a wonderful embedded culture of craft, a very rich history of craft. We also have the 10 S-curve industries that the government has identified. For example, inbound tourism and healthcare.
Yeah,
that's a big market. Automotive, biofuels, and agriculture is a huge opportunity here. If we consider, Thailand has an all-round harvest season. It has a wonderful climate for growing fresh produce. So the 10 S-curve industries that the government has identified very much define the dimensions of where the opportunities lie for growth and for producing value. In terms of exports, it basically comes down to rice, pharmaceuticals, basic requirements. Naraya is a very successful textile and apparel company in Thailand, and but we will see. It's a great place for manufacturing, for automotive. We have Honda and Toyota here, obviously. In terms of actually brand Thailand and exporting brand Thailand, that's a huge challenge. Yeah.
Well, why do you think it needs a unicorn? Like, I mean, unicorn is when they're on the stock market and they reach a valuation and people believe that it's going to be worth something, and it's not necessarily, like a good thing. It's more about the stock market having an IPO and stuff like that. I see much more value. Like the companies I work with in Italy, and I mean a lot of them in Germany, they don't really care to even be on the stock market. They just want to make a great product, and they're selling it. You think a unicorn is important? I mean, do people in Thailand think that, in the business community, they think it's important to have this status symbol? Or
I think so. I think it's very, very important. And I'll give you two examples. There is Grab, which is a Malaysian Singaporean equivalent to Uber, and the Indonesian equivalent of that is Gojek. So, food deliveries and private car transportation on scooters, for example, not just motor cars. We have the infrastructure to do that, but it wasn't realized. We have Grab and Gojek now here in Thailand, and the question is, why do unicorns constantly fail here?
Yeah,
I think
I get your point, because in Serbia it's similar, because there are companies that come in and take over the market, doing things that I think local companies can do in a month. And they do in a month when they're paid by a UK or a USA company to do it, but they don't do it themselves. It's a bit strange, like this kind of basic businesses like delivery service and
Yes.
stuff like that. It doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't someone do it locally? It seems kind of like a sense of confidence in design, because when you're paid, because Thailand, I think, is you mentioned a couple of things, and it seems like it's an outsourcing place, meaning people manufacture things there, just like they do in Serbia or all of these developing places. And then people are, locals are very good designers, but only when they're given the authority, maybe by someone else to design as a form of outsourcing. But when they have to build the whole thing themselves, they're kind of like a fish out of the water. I don't know.
Yes.
I think design plays a big role in giving that confidence to school. I mean, I don't know. I think the most important thing designers can learn in the school is being a designer is 99% attitude, So
Very much.
Yeah. So it's all about that attitude to give
Yes.
them confidence that what they design is good enough, as someone coming from outside and telling them how to do it,
Yes. I think Bangkok's very well placed in that respect. I mean, we have Chulalongkorn University, which is the top university in Southeast Asia. Thammasat, King Mongkut. There are some incredible higher education institutions here. The quality of design undergraduate is very, very high. Bangkok as a place to do business is excellent in terms of retail banking and getting things done. Public transport is very, very good here compared to the other mega cities. And actually, many design agencies choose Bangkok as their regional hub over Singapore or Hong Kong for two reasons. First of all, is opportunity. There are 15 million people in Bangkok, so that's more than Singapore and Hong Kong combined. And also, the just in terms of the creativity of the city, it is very, very vibrant, and there are many design agencies from one or two people up to large, the likes of WPP and Publicis. So I truly believe that Bangkok is the creative hub for the design industry in Southeast Asia, and arguably over Singapore.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so big. So much for me using Wikipedia. I need to scroll to see that. That's huge. But so what how do you see? Because I'm driving into this thing. I'm more interested in the future and the role of design in the future. So to be honest, I'm not so much into. I'm not a fan of advertising agencies, especially when they're coming from Europe, from developed places, and they're just like, at the end, they're just selling another Coca-Cola product, or something, or a local copy of Coca-Cola, which can, have like 5% of the market. What I'm most interested in, and what I like about you making a school, is that it's an opportunity to be non-institutional, is to create designers who can, develop the local market beyond, just being consumers. So I see as design is kind of like a gun or like a knife. Like depending how you use it, you can use it to do something maybe good, but you can use it also to do something bad. So yes. I'm trying to define the ethics here. Like short-term ethics would be, Thailand has. I haven't been there, but everything I heard is like an amazing culture that probably has something worth sharing, just like Serbia is an amazing culture, has something worth sharing with the rest of the world. Like there are lessons embedded in our behavior that everybody can benefit from, even from recent history or long-term you know, going back in history, so that are embedded in our behavior, in our thinking, that can be shared. And I wouldn't want to, you know, so if I would be teaching designers in a place like Serbia, and Thailand is much bigger, it's much more powerful than Serbia. You know, I come from a very small, also, you know, undeveloped country. So and I'm thinking that I wouldn't want that these countries are not so developed, you know, I mean, or they are developed, but they feel they're undeveloped. And then someone is taking them over, that these lessons are learned. So I see designers as kind of, you know, cultural workers that have to kind of protect that. And that's what's interesting about your school, because it's a independent school that can take a direction. And maybe I'm rambling. I don't know if I'm very coherent.
No, I'm processing your points, and I think one of the key things is, you know, what is the motivation of a young person to go into the design industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah.
Okay, so is it to make money, or is it to make change? I've seen a shift over the years I've been teaching in Southeast Asia from, you know, design for artifact and, you know, having, you know, exquisite typography and printing and wanting to go into the traditional agency model. There is a significant cultural shift in young people who are far more politically engaged than when I was an undergraduate, far more politically engaged for obvious reasons that we cannot discuss here due to certain laws, but the quality of work, and also the questions that the students are asking, which is again framed around how to create social, cultural, and economic value. And in that response, it's very, very refreshing. I would put undergraduates up against anyone out of Stanford or UAL or RMIT in terms of the key areas of change that Thai students are looking at, because they're incredibly passionate. Thailand is a very, very nationalistic country, and they are very passionate about the future of the country, socially and politically, in particular.
Also, it's a Buddhist place, you know. So I mean, I would love to see more. I mean, even if they are not religious, but just like more design coming from a Buddhist culture, you know, that should be interesting. Yeah. So
I think that the challenge there in all emerging markets, Nicola, is to try and get the design conversation higher up the stakeholder food chain. Yeah. Because by the time we get projects, you know, we as in terms of the design industry, it's almost too late. You know, the stakeholder thinks that they have an idea for an app, for example, and the question is, well, why? Well, because my friend working at this other retail bank has one as well, so I want one. So it's almost too late. What we want to do is, the perceived value of design in Southeast Asia is quite low if you compare that to, you know, Japan or the US or the UK, for example. So we want to be able to try and educate stakeholders at C-level and people, NGOs with funding, that actually there is a valid investment in the process of design to actually, you know, make change happen, you know, rather than just, you know, be there at the birth. It's better to be there at the conception. Yeah.
And how do you see the tension, you know, between you know, the external perception of design and the external role of design as kind of bringing this multinational generic, you know, business thing, you know, everywhere around the world, trying to standardize everything. And then also design being let's say a defender or a developer of the local culture and the local knowledge. And again, I'm focusing here on design because I think that the designers are more powerful than artists and writers and filmmakers and stuff, because design is in some ways it's more honest, it's more direct, you know, like you make a product or you make a communication, and you're more honest about making it. You know, if you make a movie or you make a poem, And sometimes you can just make it and you can give an illusion that there is something going on, but it's forgotten, very quickly. But a good product and a good communication system can stay and can impact millions. And Thailand is a big country.
Yes.
So this tension is very interesting to me, because in my life, I saw big changes in Italy. I saw changes in Serbia. I lived in South Africa, not so shortly, but let's say shortly. Now it's going to become shortly after apartheid. And I saw the changes. I saw actually the Cape Town change very much. And they're talking a lot about design there. They have the design in Daba and all that stuff, And so I'm very interested in the role of design as between these two tensions, especially design schools, and how do you want your students to be? How would they balance that thing, the conflict? And of course, I know that a single designer cannot choose a side. We have to do both. Otherwise, it's a bit strange. You're saying no to clients is impossible.
It is, and that's something that we're very heavy on at DSA. It's interesting your point earlier. You bigged up the role of design. The other side of the coin is designers are the blue collar workers of art. Sometimes. I think it's having that ability to, regardless of whether you're a junior or you've been in this industry for 10, 20 years, you need to get over that cultural wall of being able to be presenting work or presenting ideas to someone who may be perceived as, higher up than you in terms of the culture hierarchy. We are experts and we're being paid to offer advice, as are, our colleagues at McKinsey and Accenture. And I believe we should be treated with the same reverence and have the same ability to bring something to the conversation, rather than, I've got a yellow one, I want a blue one now. Why? Well, because my wife likes blue, for example. It's having that ability to tell that story and that narrative persuasively, such that it adds value and really, we understand the business problem of what you have. That's why we're in front of you, and this is how we want to fix it, and we think this is the best way to fix it for you. That's coming along the line. So there's lots of opportunities here. I've been very impressed with the quality and the rigor of young people entering the industry, and I think that's going to snowball as well, providing we see a lot of very talented creatives, come in, they do 1 or 2 years and they come and join their family companies. They get fed up with the design industry. So the question is, why? Is it because, is it a salary thing? I don't think it is. Particularly UX UI juniors are paid above market rate here. So we see a lot of fall off as well. I think the challenge for everyone in the design industry here is to make sure that we keep looking after these incredible assets. I'm a firm believer particularly in this part of the world, that design as part of a free market economics offering will help. Throwing money at NGOs is not sustainable here. We have a huge amount of people here in the United Nations, et cetera, et cetera. But if we can get more free market economics and more value out of the professional practice of design, I think then we're going to really get some change. Okay.
So you think as the business develops and becomes more international, then naturally the local ideas are going to mix and share, and they're going to go outside, and they're going to become stronger inside and go outside and together with the international ideas. Sorry, I keep pushing on one idea. Maybe I'm completely off,
No, that's cool.
Just where my mind is, because it's very interesting to me. The part of the world is, I see similarities. It's just like when I used to go to South Africa, because I see similarities, because where I come from, and I lived in States, in Italy and all these places, but I also grew up in Africa and stuff. So Serbia is in between. Thailand seems to be kind of in between, like really good places and really bad places. So I'm always interested in designing a place like that, because when I was a kid, when I was a young designer, I was looking at what these people do in these big cities. And it was all very interesting to me, but I lost interest. I'm more into like how can design work in another place, in where the other 99% of the people live, and so
and I think
my questions are weird, but this is I'm interested in this context.
Well, I would love to see. We were talking about similarities. As you know, we have the Association of Southeast Asian Member States, ASEAN, and many of the members have the same problems. I mentioned a few cities earlier, but if we look at the social, economic, and cultural problems the Philippines has, and Indonesia, and Malaysia, and Vietnam, and Thailand, and those are the key 5 emerging markets in Southeast Asia. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have more cross collaboration and actually have programs of design thinking and innovation? Because I'm sure there are similar challenges in Jakarta that there are in Bangkok, and similar challenges in Manila that there are in KL, for example. So I would really love to see more of a more cross-fertilization in terms of how we can really add some impact here.
Yeah, and what do you think is the difference between studying at design at, I don't know, Parsons or somewhere in London, what's St. Martin's is the school or whatever, and in Thailand or in your school?
I think well, access to knowledge first and foremost. Unfortunately, and I'm taking Thailand separately from metropolitan Bangkok. Most students in higher education are from metropolitan Bangkok, and what we want to do is change that, and we want to draw in more students from tier 1 and tier 2 cities. The difference is access to resources and access to information, in terms of libraries, museums, galleries, design agencies. New York and London, will always be beyond everybody else, because there's so much history there in terms of design and access to literature, and also in terms of the level of how Thai students can access design references. Of course we have the internet, but in terms of getting import tax on books, for example, is horrific here, and just basic ways of supporting knowledge and resources. By that extent, Thai students are very resourceful and use shortcuts to get reference books in, but it's a perpetual challenge, to actually embed in the student. Well, life is not just Arjan Taifa Professor Arjan Google. Having the ability to go into the Wellcome Library in London, for example, the Wellcome Trust, go into the library there, just an unbelievable amount of literature and resources to flick through, and that's pretty much non-existent here. Singapore is very different, of course. The government is awash with money and has invested wisely and heavily in libraries and museums and galleries. But the big emerging markets in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, and the Philippines really need to kind of push that a little bit more.
Yeah, and I just had a great question in my head, and it literally disappeared as I was supposed to, because I had it when you were speaking, and I was like, I'm going to ask this question. It's a good question, but I cannot remember it now. So please say something so you can.
Okay.
Because my brain because when you started listing the countries, and I have a map here, and I keep looking at the map to get the context, and I see that you're skipping Myanmar, because you don't put it in that. I remember the question. Is there such a thing as a Thai, like you go to Scandinavia, they invented the Scandinavian design. You go to Netherlands, they invented, Dutch design. Italians didn't need to invent it. They had it since, long time ago, ever since the rip off the ancient Greece and then the Renaissance. So is there such a thing as Thai design or Southeast Asia design? Because Japan has it, China has it. Is there such a thing as Southeast Asia design or Thai design?
Absolutely, there is. And this comes back from the traditional roots of design, which is craft. Yeah. This originated, through auspicious Buddhist and Islamic cultures. That's the traditional roots of visual design, and obviously with craft, there is such a huge importance of craft here. This is something that the Thai equivalent of the Design Council in the UK, we have TCDC, the Thailand Creative Development Council, is very, very big on. So there is a unique look and feel of Thai design. It's quite kitsch. It may not be, in terms of aesthetic, what we as Europeans would consider advanced or intelligent, but it does exist, and it's fundamentally wrong for the likes of me to teach, a very Anglo-colonial type of design. What we have to do is actually, reimagine and look at the rich history of craft and how that's influencing design, and not enforce, a very imperial, modernist, functional form kind of pedagogy when we're looking at these areas of education.
Well, I'm sure it's not more kitsch than Italian Renaissance. That's like the pinnacle, or anything that followed. It cannot be more kitschy than that. That's so is there like a famous Thai designer, visual designer, product designer, but local? Maybe, because often when people say someone famous, and they say someone who was like in Thailand until year 10, and then they moved to London or New York, but someone who's local, who's famous locally, or not, like really developed there.
Well, Arjan, one of my colleagues, Arjan Tap, who runs Farm Group, exceptional design agency. Mm-hmm. He's a huge Liverpool fan, so sometimes we disagree. A wonderful work, and I will put his practice up against anyone else in London. And also, as I mentioned, the clothing and textile brand Naraya are very, very popular here and across Southeast Asia. We also have a very active contemporary arts scene as well, and I think that influences design. We have the Bangkok Biennale, lots of practicing artists here as well. So we do get a really interesting merging of art and design and curatorial practice in Bangkok.
Yeah, I'm looking at Farm Group. I'm looking at their peace flag. Very nice. Beautiful. That's very cool. So what's your advice to anybody starting a design school?
My advice would be just do it, and then post-rationalize everything later, which is kind of how I work, and I'm sure that's how you work.
The same process having kids.
Yes, I firmly disagree that design is incremental. You do that, you do that, you do that, and you do that. Design and innovation evolve from intuitive leaps of faith and going with your instinct. Obviously this is a commercial entity. We are here to add value to the design ecosystem, but we also want to make a profit for our directors and shareholders as well. So one head on the business side and the opportunity side, and kind of lean startup and looking at value propositions and price points and all of that. And similar to what Hyper Island have done, very, very successfully, General Assembly to a point, but more on the tech side. So there are definitely opportunities there. If I think in terms of learning and development in this part of the world, in these emerging markets, what's the biggest problem that the design industry has? You need to identify that and then work backwards. And the simple answer is scale.
Yeah.
Companies here have opportunity, they have the resources, but being able to scale is the biggest problem for emerging markets in Southeast Asia. So what we do is essentially we help scale through accelerating talent.
Oh, okay. And do you think the world needs more small independent design schools? I mean, obviously, yes, but
I think it needs, I think the whole ubiquitous design higher education ecosystem needs to change a bit. Do all roads lead to Parsons and UAL? To a point they do. I would like to see a little bit more independence going on. You know, I see ourselves, you know, it's a bit like my time at Factory Records. I see myself as a bit of an independent record label. You know, we're not Sony Music or Columbia, and we don't wish to be. You know, we like to be, you know, kind of small and quite edgy and quite progressive and quite disruptive in that sense. And I think there's opportunities there for other people to do that as well.
but don't you think it's dangerous that, you know, now with remote education, you know, as remote education develops, that education becomes even more centralized, you know, because
Yes.
what protected you is that, you know, that there was no remote work, so you need to physically make it, you know, and unless you have something that is very, very, very local, then, you know, like Google is going to show up and have a Google design course and have like 1 billion people study it and give them a certificate, and then everybody's the same, you know. So
yeah, I can answer that very, very simply. So one of our programs is a co-op program. Students come in, they do 6 weeks of user experience expertise, then they do 6 weeks of design business leadership, which is the thing that they don't teach you at art school. It's kind of MBA light, being how to be entrepreneurial, how to blend these things. And then all of our students go on co-op placements for a month. We place them with companies that we have partnerships with. They get paid market rate. And we expect them to be on fee paid work from the get-go. It's not an internship. They're not expected to be mentored hour by hour. So this is the opportunity. I believe taking the knowledge from the virtual classroom into the professional studio will accelerate scale, and it will allow people to come into the industry, and having that blend of professional practice plus education. This co-op model I think is really interesting. It's nothing I've come up with. It was in fact the Allman School started it, I think, in 1913. The ability to advance industry through embedded education in the workplace, I think, is the future of design education.
Yeah. Okay. And again, if everything's remote, I'm always thinking, how can that be hacked? Yeah, but I think it's a decent mode. Okay, I have 2 more questions. Do you have more time? Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Okay. So, last question for you is how do you see design education in, let's say, 100 years, or how do you see design in 100 years from now?
I would hope that,
let's say, design education, maybe. Yeah.
I would hope that young people at foundation level, school leavers, 16, 17-year-olds, I hope that they would have wonderful learning and teaching support with very enigmatic, very charismatic educators who take them on a journey out of their comfort zone and mentor them and put them on the runway to their careers. I've been very fortunate to have the most incredible design educators informing me. So I think it's so important that we retain design educators who are practitioners as well. In that sense, that is what I would like to see in 100 years. I would like to see the likes of you and me, being very passionate about the subject and taking young people on a journey that at first they feel uncomfortable with, but then they, you get the aha moment, and inspiring them and nurturing them and putting them on a career path that's very rewarding, in a similar mold and shape to us.
Okay. So what happened to you, which is a good experience, that it remains, and is available to more people?
Yeah.
Okay. Who are the people who inspired you, who mentored you?
It was going back, not chronologically. So Professor Teal Triggs at the Royal College of Art. I was lucky enough to study my Masters of Research under Professor Triggs. Wonderful woman, and just incredible opportunity to be taught by the absolute best in the industry. So many. I think also my first job at Factory Records. I was an intern, and I was supposed to be 6 weeks, and it ended up being 6 years there. John Macklin. Pardon?
Not an internship, 6 years, no.
No, it wasn't. No, I ended up being creative director of the Hacienda nightclub, and still good friends with New Order. So people come in and out of your life, in terms of peers, and I think when you look back, there is a kind of rich body of people who actually have very similar mindsets. So yeah, I think I hope the one takeaway from this conversation would be, for anyone in the professional practice of design, there's always opportunities in education, and it's incredibly rewarding experience to do that.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a question for me? That's the last question.
Yes. Can you copy Antirom for me, and would you trust putting it actually in a CD-ROM drive?
I'm afraid of touching it. It feels like I don't know, like the most valuable thing in the world. And these things, I'm afraid of looking at them. I'm afraid of moving them. I know it's somewhere. I'm afraid even of looking. I'm just imagining it somewhere safe in the house.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I would probably need to ask my CTO, because he would not have that. My partner in business, he would not have that emotional pressure, and historic pressure, because I put so much value on this in my mind. To my kids, like a strange disc, but to me, yeah, it's
yes. I remember seeing it in 95, 96, and I remember just being speechless.
Really amazing work, yeah.
It is. So I wish there was an archive of Antirom.
What annoys me most with these things, and this is what I'm afraid about the Thailand, and this is what I'm hinting in through all my questions. I mean, I'm not able to formalize it, but now that you mentioned Antirom, it's exactly the same problem that happened to Antirom. Is that Antirom, if there was not that disk, I'm 100% convinced there would be no iPhone.
I am.
Yeah, I mean, everybody who knows them, who knows what they've done, and who has seen it, and then we all worked. I started working 98, 99, 2000, and I know that without them, there would be, none of this. There would be none of this. This would not exist.
I would love to draw up a family tree of those that have been influenced or worked indirectly with the Antirom family, because we would all end up there.
Yeah, and they would, and nobody knows that. And this is why I keep hinting on, because for me, it's not that Thailand is small or Serbia is small, or it's that there are groups of people that create enormous value, and then that is lost. And I don't believe in rules that needs to be lost. I don't believe in that. I think that there is always a struggle that they shouldn't be lost, because if we lose, when young designers don't know that then Antirom was necessary for iPhone to exist, or Samsung or whatever, then they are not able to create another Antirom. And this is a big problem. I think only there is iPhone, there is only Apple, and there is only, Apple is great. Also it's a necessary element. If you don't have Apple and Antirom, you don't have the change in society. You have to have both, but you cannot have only one. And that's, I see Antirom as and I'm always wondering how many Antiroms do we lose, like in the countryside of Thailand, somewhere in South Africa or somewhere in Serbia, where it's not only that they don't have access. It's not that I can understand someone being in a farm field and not having access. Okay, and they're just like good at picking the something in a rice field or whatever, unfortunately. But what I think is a huge error is when they actually have access and they go to school and they're taught that they should only work at Apple. If you know what I mean, they should just be a good designer in Apple, in a big, as you mentioned, Publicis and these things, because Publicis they haven't created anything. It's the Antirom that created everything. And then
exactly. This is why I feel I very much am in the same camp as my analogy of being an independent record label and being a bit more rock and roll about things.
Yeah. And you mentioned New Order. I love the band, so you know them, you're friends.
Yes, I was very lucky to work with them for 6 years at Factory, and Tony Wilson was a very, very close friend, and that kind of started my career and very much molded the kind of philosophy of what I'm doing now.
What's a real tragedy, because this is in the last 1 hour of the interview, and I don't know if anybody's gonna listen all the way through. So to whoever is listening, and thank you. This is probably for me it was the best part. Now we formalize things, and I was able to say something that how I felt.
That's great.
Thank you very much, Graham. So
Nicola, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Ciao.
All right. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.